Welcome to Behind the Investigations. I'm your host, Mike, with Elite Investigations here in Billings, Montana. And today, I invite you to join me on a journey that has haunted me for over a decade. In every investigator's career, there are those cases that linger and that gnaw at the edge of our conscience. And for me, it's the tragic story of Justin Detzer in Plentywood, Montana. A young man who lost his life in a house fire back in late 2014. A case that I believe was not just a fire, but murder. This particular investigation has stayed with me, constant reminder of the challenges and frustrations of seeking justice. It's been 11 years, yet the questions remain unanswered, and the memory of Justin's life, abruptly cut short, still echoes in my mind. In this episode, we will revisit the case, not just through my eyes, but with the voices of those who were closest to it. I've remained in contact with the family, and together, we hope to shed new light on the events of the fateful night. Could time have softened the memories of potential witnesses, encouraging them to come forward with new information? Before we proceed, I want to make it clear, no one has been charged in connection with this death. What you'll hear are my thoughts and opinions only, based on my years of experience and the evidence, or lack thereof, that we have had to work with. Our goal is not to cast blame without proof, but to seek the truth, no matter how long it takes. Join me as we step behind the investigation and take a closer look at a case that refuses to let go. And maybe, just maybe, together, we'll find the missing pieces and bring a semblance of peace to a family that deserves answers. So pour yourself a cup of coffee or your favorite drink, sit back, stay curious, and let's uncover the truth together as we embark on today's episode of Behind the Investigation. Welcome back to Behind the Investigation. Today we dive into a tragic case that unfolded in Plentywood, Montana on September 21st, 2014. The core events began around 4:30 a.m. when the Plentywood Fire Department was dispatched to a house fire. By the time they arrived, the house was fully engulfed in flames and there was no chance of saving it. So let's start at the beginning of this case. Let's talk about Justin Detzer. He was just 31 at the time of his death. He was a veteran of the armed services, and he was from Pennsylvania. Justin and a friend worked in the oil fields on the North Dakota/Montana border. They visited Plentywood, Montana during their time off. Justin had met a 30-something-year-old woman who I'll refer to from now on as Jane Doe. Jane Doe was in the process of buying a house that was built in the 1930s. And she offered it to Justin and his friend to stay in. The house had no power or water, and supposedly they used candles for light and heat. The fire department was dispatched at 4:30 a.m. on September 21st, 2014. The neighbor had reported a popping sound and then saw flames. When the fire chief arrived on scene, the house was fully engulfed and the floor collapsed down into the basement. The fire chief then called for the state fire marshal to come and help with the investigation. The state fire marshal arrived on scene later that day at 3:15 p.m., coming all the way from Helena, Montana. Justin's body was found in the rubble. So all of you true crime buffs, I want to ask you a question. How many crime scene photos would you think a fire investigator would take of a scene where a body was found in it? Maybe 100 or more? From every possible angle? Because once you release that scene, it's hard to go back and take photos because things have been moved, weather, all this stuff can happen. The scene has been contaminated. So at that time, you have one chance to get all the photos. Well, this state fire inspector only took 19 photos. Mind you, he had a digital camera. So it wasn't like he was running out of film. 19 photos. That was the start of this case going downhill. The autopsy showed that Justin died of smoke inhalation. It took a while, but once his toxicology came back, there was a small amount of alcohol and drugs that were present in his system. They had started to suggest that this was an accidental fire. Justin's sister, Alessandra, did not take that well. She believed her brother was murdered because she was receiving text messages from people in the community. Now, she lived down out of state, and this troubled her, some of these messages she was getting. They were telling her of a suspect, which in turn was Jane Doe, and that even people in the community believed Jane Doe had something to do with it. So Justin's sister reached out to me and hired me. I started to look into this Jane Doe. The house was in the process of being purchased by her, and she had a contract of deed with another elderly female. Jane Doe claimed she was up to date on her payments, but I had learned by talking to the original homeowner that Jane Doe was months behind her payments and that the homeowner had started to foreclose on the property. On the night of the fire, Jane Doe arrived at the scene when the fire department was there with another family member. She told officers she had last seen Justin at 11:30 p.m., insisting she wanted him and his friend out of the house. However, video evidence that I had obtained showed that the last time she saw Justin was much later. It was around midnight or 1 a.m. Jane Doe, prior to the fire, was over at a friend's house drinking, where just before she left, she had made some troubling comments. She had talked about wanting to see somebody burn in a fire, which caught her friends kind of off guard. I mean, who talks like that or says that? She also, when she left the house, left with a full cup of rum, telling friends that she was going to go burn something. She left that party around 4 a.m. Later, when I was able to interview her with the help of the undersheriff, she admitted that she drove by the house at 4 a.m. to check on it. Now, remember, the fire was called into the fire department at 4:30 a.m. So Jane Doe puts herself at the crime scene right about the time the fire started. She also admitted to making those statements at the party that she had fantasized about watching somebody burn in a fire. Now, as a private investigator, there are times where we have to get with law enforcement, and I've talked about it in other cases. And this is no different. I had collaborated with the undersheriff, and we both interviewed Jane Doe, and we both believe that she possibly had something to do with it. Now, looking into this case, we had learned that Jane Doe had a crush on Justin, and she wanted more out of the relationship, and he wasn't willing to do it. He didn't find her attractive, but he liked her as a friend, and him and his friend needed a place to stay. So she felt used. She was very upset. You know, we also looked into the bar footage because everybody kept saying, well, Justin was so drunk that he must have passed out in the house, knocked over a candle, and started the fire. Well, we went back and looked at the footage from the bar that night, and Justin only had a couple of drinks, and when he was moving around the bar and socializing with people on video, he did not appear very intoxicated. He wasn't stumbling and then talking to witnesses at the bar. He wasn't slurring. To them, they did not feel that he was intoxicated. And again, the toxicology report came back and it indicated low levels of alcohol. So contradicting what law enforcement and the fire inspector was trying to say. Also, the fire inspector never took any samples from the house, as in he claimed he could not determine where the fire started. But he took no evidence. He didn't take any charred remains to be tested for any, gasoline or anything that would start a fire. All this guy did was show up on scene and take 19 pictures. And then, without interviewing anybody other than law enforcement at the scene, make the determination that it was accidental. Not good. So, once I was able to gather information on Jane Doe with the help of the local undersheriff, this case was getting too big for the small sheriff's office. So I made what now was a mistake and had them call the state DOJ, Department of Justice, and ask for one of their criminal investigators to come to the scene. Now, for those of you from out of state, Plentywood is on the far side, east side of the state of Montana, right on the border of North Dakota. That means the investigator had to drive all the way from Billings there, which is about a, 3-4 hour drive. So they're not happy that they have to drive there. They're also were not happy that a private investigator was involved. Mind you, if it wasn't for this private investigator who blew this case wide open, they wouldn't even be there. They didn't even know about Jane Doe. And that fact that she had made the comments before the fire, she was at the crime scene prior to the fire, and she was just weeks, if not a month away from losing the house and not having anything. And she was upset with the victim. So they take over the investigation. I hand it off to them, and it goes nowhere. They went supposedly to talk to Jane Doe after me and the undersheriff interviewed her, and at this point, she lawyered up. She didn't want to talk to him. So what did they do? Do you think they would have went around and re-talked to witnesses that I had talked to and that had texted the family, the sister, telling her all of these statements? Nope. Basically, once Jane Doe lawyered up, they closed the case. They told the family that there's nothing they could do. There wasn't enough evidence to bring on Jane Doe. Well, the simple fact was they didn't want to be driving back and forth from Billings to Plentywood. That's my belief. Because in all my years, it's just shocking. This case has eaten on me over the years. I think about it a lot. I've reached out to the family members, and with their blessing, obviously we're going to reopen the case, and I'm going to re-interview some of the old witnesses and hopefully find some new ones. So I'm going to bring you along on that journey when this happens, and as I get new information, we'll be bringing it here and letting you all know. And if anybody watching this from Plentywood has any information on this case, please come forward. Let us know. We would like to get closure for the family. This investigation remains open. There are many more details to this case that warrant further discussion. If anyone has information or insight, please reach out to us. And I want to thank you for joining us on Behind the Investigation. And remember, stay safe and stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one.